They did not just unplug my server, they pulled their own life support without even knowing it. When my father, Douglas, smashed my $5,000 encrypted hard drive just to make room for his ratty massage chair, and my sister, Serena, smirked that my fake job mattered less than her scented candle livestream, I did not scream, I just smiled. At 3 a.m, I vanished with every password. By sunrise, they woke up in a freezing concrete shell with federal agents knocking. This is how I taught them the price of ingratitude. My name is Annalise Carver. I am 34 years old, and in the world of corporate warfare, silence is the most expensive commodity on the market. I work as a senior data architect for a company called Obsidian Systems. You will not find our logo on billboards, and you will certainly not see our commercials during the Super Bowl. We exist in the blind spots of the digital world. I design the vaults where pharmaceutical conglomerates hide their formulas and where private defense contractors bury their mistakes. My job requires a dedicated server connection, 2 encrypted hard drives, 3 49-inch curved monitors, and an absolute, unbroken concentration. A single decimal point misplaced in my line of work does not just mean a bad grade or a lost bonus. It means millions of dollars in liability and a federal investigation. For the last 3 years, since I moved back into my childhood home to manage the household after my mother passed, I have operated out of the sunroom at the back of the house. When I arrived, it was a rotting wooden frame filled with dead flies and peeling paint. It was a carcass of a room, but I saw the potential. I saw the isolation. I spent $40,000 of my own post-tax income to transform that space. I did not just paint the walls. I reinforced the subfloor to handle the weight of my server rack. I replaced the single-pane glass with triple-paned, gas-filled acoustic windows that turned the room into a vacuum of silence. I paid for the upgraded fiber optic internet package that ran a dedicated line from the street directly into that room. A line that did not touch the chaotic Wi-Fi network my family used to stream bad reality television. I bought the desk, a solid walnut slab that cost me $3,000. I bought the Herman Miller chair. I bought the climate control unit that kept the room at a constant 68 degrees to protect my equipment. That room was not just an office, it was my cockpit. It was the engine that generated the money that paid for the organic groceries in the fridge downstairs, the gas in my father's SUV, and the credit card bills my sister seemed to think were paid by magic elves. On Tuesday afternoon, I came home early from a mandatory security briefing in D.C. I was tired. My head was throbbing with the low-level migraine that always accompanies a 6-hour flight. I was looking forward to the silence of my sunroom. I had a critical deadline approaching, a security audit for a logistics firm in Tokyo that needed to be finalized by midnight. I unlocked the front door. The first thing I noticed was the noise. It was not the usual background hum of the television. It was the sound of heavy furniture being dragged across hardwood floors. Then came the voice of my father. "Douglas, careful with the wires. Just yank them," he shouted. I dropped my suitcase. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed in the hallway. But no one heard it. I walked toward the back of the house. The double French doors leading to my sunroom were wide open. I stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. My workspace, the sanctuary I had built with $40,000 and 3 years of sweat, was gone. My desk had been shoved against the far wall, scratching the expensive bamboo flooring I had installed last year. My 3 monitors were stacked on top of each other on the floor like dirty dishes. But what made my blood turn to ice was the server rack. My server, the heart of my operation. The machine that held the encrypted keys to data worth more than this entire neighborhood, had been dismantled. The cables had not been unplugged. They had been ripped out. The main unit was sitting in the hallway, upside down, propped up against a pile of old magazines. I stood there, staring at the exposed copper wires of my custom Ethernet setup sticking out of the wall like severed veins. "Dad," I said. My voice was quiet. It was the quiet before a hurricane. Douglas turned around. He was 62 years old, A man who had retired 10 years early because he felt his management style was too visionary for the local paper mill. He was wearing a velour tracksuit that I had paid for. He was sweating, his face flushed with the exertion of destroying my career. "Oh, you are back," he said, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "Good. You can help us move this recliner." I looked past him. My younger sister, Serena, was standing in the center of the room. At 29, Serena listed her occupation as life coach and energy healer. In reality, she was a professional drain on my bank account who spent 6 hours a day filming videos for TikTok about manifesting abundance while I was the one actually manifesting the checks. She was holding a ring light in one hand and a bundle of burning sage in the other. The smoke was thick, cloying, and acrid. It smelled like burning weeds. "What is happening?" I asked. "Why is my server in the hallway? We are repurposing the space," Serena said. She did not even look at me. She was too busy adjusting the tripod she had set up exactly where my ergonomic chair used to be. "The lighting in here is perfect for the golden hour content. The vibes in the living room were stagnant. I need a space that breathes." "You unplugged my server," I said. Stepping into the room, I felt a vibration in my hands, a tremor of pure, unadulterated rage. "Do you have any idea what you just did? That is a live connection. I have a contract. Relax." "Annie," Douglas said, waving his hand dismissively. He grabbed the arm of his massive, peeling leather massage chair and heaved it another inch into the room. "We are making a family room, a wellness center. I need a place to use the massager where I can watch the birds. It is good for my circulation." I stared at him. My brain was trying to process the logic. But there was no logic. There was only Douglas's logic. "This is my office," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I paid for this room. I paid for the walls. I paid for the floor. I paid for the internet you are using to upload your videos." "And it is my house," Douglas snapped. The jovial veneer vanished, replaced by the petulant sneer he used whenever his authority was questioned. "I am the patriarch of this family. Annalisa. I decide how the rooms are utilized, but I work here." I said, "Work." Serena scoffed. She set the sage down on the windowsill, right on top of a stack of my confidential hard drive cases. "You sit and stare at screens. You just type. You can do that anywhere. You are blocking the flow of energy in the best room in the house with all these machines. It is toxic. Toxic," I repeated. "That machine pays for your organic kale smoothies." "Serena, don't throw money in my face," she said, her eyes narrowing. "That is so low vibration. You always make it about money. We are talking about mental health. Dad needs to relax. I need to build my brand. You are just being selfish." Selfish. The word hung in the air, heavy and absurd. I looked at the chaotic pile of my equipment. "Where am I supposed to work?" I asked. "I have a deadline in 12 hours. "The kitchen table is fine," Douglas said, finally getting the massage chair positioned to his liking. He sat down in it with a groan of satisfaction. "Or the dining room. I cannot work in the kitchen." I said, "I deal with sensitive security protocols. I need silence. I need a hardline connection. I cannot have you blending margaritas while I'm auditing a firewall." "Then go to the shed," Serena suggested. She picked up a large mason jar filled with water and sliced cucumbers. "The shed?" I asked. I was referring to the 12 by 12 structure in the backyard that was currently housing a rusted lawnmower, 3 families of raccoons, and a colony of brown recluse spiders. It had no insulation, 1 flickering bulb, and a door that did not close all the way. "Yeah, the shed," Serena said, shrugging. "It is quiet out there. You said you wanted isolation. It is perfect. Plus, you do not need natural light for spreadsheets. Right? It is just numbers." I looked at Douglas. I waited for him to laugh. I waited for him to say that this was a joke, that they were just rearranging things to clean the floors. "You know, that is not a bad idea," Douglas said, leaning back and closing his eyes. "The shed is private. You can type away out there all night and not disturb us. The clicking of your keyboard is actually very annoying when we are trying to watch movies. You want me to move $100,000 worth of sensitive equipment into a shed with a dirt floor?" I asked. "Stop being so dramatic," Douglas said. He picked up the remote for the massage chair and pressed a button. The chair began to hum and vibrate. Just run an extension cord. I looked at my desk. My custom mechanical keyboard was sitting on the edge, precariously close to where Serena was setting up her crystals. It was a heavy, aluminum chassis board I had built myself. It cost $600. The switches were hand-lubed. It was a masterpiece of engineering. Serena turned to check her reflection in the glass of the window. As she turned, her elbow knocked the mason jar. It happened in slow motion. The jar tipped. The lid was not screwed on. A tidal wave of lukewarm cucumber water cascaded over the edge of the desk. It did not hit the floor. It hit my keyboard. I lunged forward, but I was too late. The water soaked into the keys. I could hear the sickening fizz of the circuitry shorting out even before I grabbed it. "Oh my God," I whispered. I picked up the dripping board. Water poured out of the USB port. "Oops," Serena said. She did not look horrified. She looked annoyed. "I told you that desk was in the way. You just destroyed it," I said, my voice shaking. "This is a custom build." "Oh, please." Serena rolled her eyes. She pulled a paper towel from her pocket and dabbed at her own shirt, ignoring the puddle on the desk. "You are rich. Annalise, just buy another one. Stop being so cheap. God, you act like it is the end of the world." "It is just a keyboard." I stood there, holding the dripping corpse of my property. I looked at Douglas. He was eyes closed, vibrating in his chair, humming along to the mechanical whirring. He did not care. He did not even open his eyes. I looked at Serena. She was already checking her phone, scrolling through filters, preparing to smile for strangers on the internet while standing in the wreckage of my livelihood. They did not see me. They did not see the work. They did not see the sacrifice. They saw a resource. They saw a utility that had malfunctioned and needed to be moved out of sight so the real stars of the show could shine. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was the sound of a heavy steel bolt sliding into place. The anger that had been bubbling in my chest for 5 years suddenly cooled. It crystallized into something hard and sharp. "Okay," I said. The word was soft. Neither of them looked up. "Okay," Douglas asked, his eyes still closed. "I will go to the shed." I said, "You are right. I need the quiet." "See?" Serena said, flashing a bright, artificial smile. "I knew you would get it. Thanks, Annie. You will not regret this. The energy in here is going to be so transformative." "Yeah," I said. "Transformative." I did not scream. I did not throw the broken keyboard at the wall. I simply unplugged the rest of my equipment. I gathered my monitors. I picked up the server unit from the hallway floor. It was heavy, 60 pounds of dead weight, but I carried it without asking for help. I walked past them. I walked through the kitchen I had paid to renovate. I walked out the back door. The evening air was biting cold. The sun was setting, casting long, jagged shadows across the unkempt lawn Douglas refused to mow. I walked to the shed. I kicked the door open. The smell hit me instantly: mildew, gasoline, and the sharp, metallic scent of rust. I cleared a space on the workbench, shoving aside old paint cans and a nest of dried leaves. I set my equipment down. I did not plug it in. There was no point. There was no internet signal out here, and the single power outlet looked like a fire hazard waiting to happen. I stood in the doorway of the shed. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself. I looked back at the house. The sunroom was glowing, warm. Golden light spilled out through the triple-paned acoustic glass I had paid for. I could see Serena dancing in front of her tripod. I could see Douglas laughing, his head thrown back, enjoying the vibration of his chair. They looked happy. They looked comfortable. They looked like they had won. They thought they had just banished me to the garden. They thought they had put the annoying, clicking machine in a box where it could not bother them. They did not realize that by cutting me off, they had severed their own lifeline. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The battery was at 12%, enough for what I needed to do. I opened my banking app. I looked at the balance. Then I looked at the autopay tab. I closed the app. I did not initiate anything yet. That was for the darkness. That was for later. I looked at the house one last time. It was a beautiful house. I had saved it from foreclosure twice. I had filled it with food and warmth and light. Enjoy the light, I whispered to the cold air. It is the last night you will ever see it. I turned back to the dark interior of the shed. I was not going to set up my server. I was going to pack. I was going to strip my identity from this property like stripping copper wire from a condemned building. Tonight, I was the daughter in the shed. Tomorrow, I would be the architect of their ruin. I sat on a rusted metal stool that wobbled on the uneven dirt floor. The air in the shed was stagnant, smelling of old motor oil and the distinct, dusty scent of dried rodent droppings. It was pitch black, save for the thin sliver of moonlight cutting through the gap in the warped doorframe. My hands were folded in my lap. They were cold, but my mind was burning with the friction of 1,000 calculations running at once, in the silence, stripped of my screens and my servers. I did not see the darkness. I saw a ledger. I saw the red ink that had been bleeding across the balance sheet of my life for half a decade. You do not end up locked in a garden shed at 34 years old, plotting a tactical retreat from your own blood relatives because of one bad Tuesday. You end up there because of 1,000 small cuts that you pretended did not bleed. You end up there because of the sunk cost fallacy, the economic principle that keeps you pouring resources into a failing investment simply because you have already invested so much. My family was a failing investment, and tonight, I was finally closing the account. I closed my eyes and rewound the tape. I went back 5 years. I went back to the day my mother died. When we buried her, Douglas fell apart. It was not a quiet grief. It was a loud, consuming collapse. He stopped paying bills. He stopped opening mail. He stopped functioning. I was 29, living in a studio apartment in the city, climbing the ladder at Obsidian Systems. I made a logical, compassionate choice. I would move back home. I would stabilize the asset. I told myself it was temporary. 6 months, just until Douglas got back on his feet. 6 months turned into 12. 12 turned into 60. The dynamic shifted so subtly I almost missed the transition. I went from being the daughter who was helping out to the infrastructure that held the roof up. It started with the mortgage, $2,400 a month. Douglas said his pension paperwork was delayed. I paid it. Then the electricity bill came. $300 because Serena liked to keep the air conditioning at 65 degrees in July. I paid it, then the internet, then the groceries. I became the walking automated teller machine. But unlike a bank, I did not charge transaction fees, and I never declined a withdrawal. I thought about the honor debt, that was what I called it in my private mental files, 3 years ago. Douglas got bored with retirement. He decided he was a stock market genius. He did not use his own money because he had none. He went to a private lender, a polite term for a loan shark who operated out of a gym in the strip mall downtown. Douglas borrowed $50,000. He put it all into a volatile biotech stock because a guy at the golf course told him it was a sure thing. It went to zero in 48 hours. The lenders did not care about biotech. They cared about their principal plus interest. They started calling the house. Then they started parking outside. Douglas came to me, weeping in the kitchen, shaking so hard he spilled his tea. He told me they were going to break his legs. He told me he was terrified. I did not lecture him. I did not scream. I went to my savings account, the money I had been putting away for a down payment on my own condo. I withdrew $80,000, the principal plus the extortionate late fees and interest. I drove to the gym. I handed a duffel bag of cash to a man with a neck tattoo. I bought my father's safety. 2 weeks later, at Thanksgiving dinner with our extended family, my Uncle Bob asked how Douglas had managed to get out of that jam he had heard rumors about. Douglas took a sip of wine, smiled a charming, rugged smile, and said he had pulled some strings. He said he had liquidated some old assets and handled it like a man. He said, "You know me, Bob. I always land on my feet." He did not look at me. I was sitting right there, eating the turkey I had paid for, in the house I had just saved from foreclosure. He erased my sacrifice to preserve his ego. That was the moment I should have left. That was the moment the balance sheet became unrecoverable. But I stayed. I stayed because I thought that was what families did. We covered for each other. Then there was Serena. If Douglas was a black hole of major capital, Serena was a steady, dripping leak. She called herself a creative. She called herself a healer. She was 29 years old and had never held a job that required a W-2 form for longer than 3 weeks. I thought about her businesses, the handmade soap company that cost me $2,000 in raw materials that eventually melted in the garage, the drop shipping phase that cost me $1,500 in website hosting fees, and now, the candles. She needed inventory. She needed branding. She needed a ring light. She needed the sunroom. But it wasn't just the business expenses, it was the theft. Last year, I bought myself a vintage Chanel blazer. It was a reward for closing the Tokyo contract. It cost $2,500. I hung it in my closet in plastic. I was saving it for a conference in London. 2 months later, I went to pack it. It was gone. When I confronted Serena, she widened her eyes. Feigning innocence, she said she had borrowed it for a photo shoot and must have left it at a friend's studio. She promised to get it back. I found it 3 days later on a resale app. The seller account was Serena Vibes. She had sold my $2,500 blazer for $400 because she needed quick cash for a weekend trip to Cabo. When I showed her the listing, she did not apologize. She cried. She told me I was materialistic. She said, "You have so much, Annie. You can buy 10 blazers. I just needed a break. My mental health was suffering." Why are you so obsessed with things? She weaponized her incompetence. She made me feel guilty for having assets while she had none, conveniently ignoring the fact that she had none because she refused to work. But the final nail in the coffin, the incident that truly solidified my status as a non-person in this household, was the car. 8 months ago, I bought a car. It was a Lexus SUV. Safe, reliable, comfortable. I bought it for Douglas. His old sedan was falling apart, and I worried about him driving on the highway. I put the title in my name for insurance purposes, but I handed him the keys. I told him, "This is for you, Dad. Please be careful." 1 month later, I got a call from the state police. The car had been involved in a collision. I rushed to the scene, my heart hammering, terrified that my father was hurt. It was not Douglas behind the wheel. It was Serena. She was standing on the side of the highway, unharmed, texting on her phone. The Lexus was wrapped around a guardrail. The front end was crushed. Douglas had given her the keys. He had given her the keys to a $50,000 vehicle because she complained that her hatchback didn't have the right aesthetic for picking up her date. When I arrived, Serena looked at me and said, "Don't be mad. The brakes felt weird." She did not ask if I was okay. She did not apologize for destroying my property. She was annoyed that her date was going to be canceled. The insurance premiums skyrocketed. I paid the deductible. I paid the increased rate. Douglas patted my shoulder and said, "It is just metal, Annie. The important thing is family." Family. Sitting in the cold shed, I realized the truth. To them, I was not family. Family is a reciprocal relationship. Family involves mutual respect, emotional support, and shared burden. We did not have that. I was a utility. I was the same as the water pipe running under the foundation. I was the same as the fiber optic cable buried in the yard. As long as I functioned, as long as I provided the flow of resources, I was invisible. They walked over me. They used me. They ignored me. But the moment a utility malfunctions, the moment the water stops or the lights flicker, the homeowner gets angry. They kick the pipe. They curse the darkness. They do not ask the pipe how it is feeling. They demand it start working again. That was what happened tonight. The utility had taken up too much space. The utility had become inconvenient, so they shoved it into the shed. They thought I would just sit here, humming quietly in the dark, waiting to be plugged back in whenever they needed a mortgage payment or a new camera lens. They were wrong. I was not just a utility. I was the architect of their entire reality. I reached into the deep recesses of my mind, past the anger, past the hurt, to a file I had created 6 months ago. I had named it Operation Blackout. I had designed it on a sleepless night after the car accident. It was a contingency plan. In my line of work, we always have a contingency for catastrophic system failure. If a server is compromised, you isolate it. If a network is infected, you sever the connection. You do not negotiate with the virus. You purge it. I had outlined every step. I knew exactly which accounts were linked. I knew exactly whose name was on the deeds, the bills, and the contracts. I knew the passwords to everything because I had set them up. I controlled the digital nervous system of the house at 42 Maple Drive. I had never executed the plan because of a weakness in my own code hope. I had hoped they would change. I had hoped that if I gave just a little more, if I was just a little more successful, a little more generous, they would finally see me. I wanted to be loved, and I was willing to pay for it. But tonight, looking at the warm glow of the sunroom where they were laughing over the ruin of my workspace, the hope evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. They wanted me out of the house. Fine, I would leave, but I was taking the infrastructure with me. I stood up from the rusted stool. My legs were stiff. The cold was seeping into my bones, but I barely felt it. I checked my watch. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. The house was dark now. The lights in the sunroom had finally gone out. Douglas and Serena were asleep, wrapped in high thread count sheets that I had purchased, dreaming of a future funded by my labor. It was time to wake up. I picked up my phone. I unlocked it. The screen was the only light in the shed. I did not open the banking app this time. I opened the Smart Home Administration panel. My thumb hovered over the Master Control icon. I took a deep breath. The air tasted of dust and decay, but to me, it tasted like freedom. Initiating sequence, I whispered to the rats in the corner. I stepped out of the shed and walked toward the back door of the house. I moved silently, a ghost in the machine I had built. I was not going back into sleep. I was going back in to extract my assets. Operation Blackout was no longer a theory. It was live. I entered the house through the back door. The kitchen was silent, bathed in the soft blue glow of the digital clock on the microwave. It read 1 in the morning. I did not turn on the lights. I knew this house better than I knew the back of my own hand. I knew which floorboard creaked in the hallway, the third one from the left. I knew that the refrigerator hummed a B-flat every 40 minutes. I moved through the shadows with the precision of a thief, but I was not stealing anything. I was repossessing my life. I went straight to the guest room closet, where I had been storing my emergency go bag. I had packed it 6 months ago, after the car accident, telling myself it was for a natural disaster. It was a sturdy, waterproof tactical backpack. I opened it on the kitchen island. I did not pack clothes. Clothes are heavy, and clothes carry memories. I did not want the sweater I wore when I paid Douglas's gambling debts. I did not want the scarf Serena borrowed and returned with a wine stain. I left them all. I went to the fireproof safe hidden behind the pantry shelves. I spun the dial. Click, click, click. The door swung open. I took the essentials, my passport, my birth certificate, the physical deed to the house which had my name on it alongside Douglas's, and the backup encrypted hard drives containing 5 years of tax returns. I took the folder labeled Medical Power of Attorney that gave me the right to make decisions for Douglas, a document I intended to shred the moment I was out of state lines. I returned to the kitchen. I opened my laptop. The screen illuminated my face in the dark room. First, the escape route. I logged into the airline portal. One-way ticket to Seattle. First class. Departure at 6:30 in the morning. Confirmed. Next, housing. I pulled up the listing for the apartment in Belltown I had bookmarked for months. It was a high-rise, 25th floor, floor-to-ceiling glass, overlooking the Puget Sound. It was expensive. It was sleek. It was everything this cluttered. Dusty suburban house was not. I clicked Apply Now. I uploaded my proof of income, my very substantial proof of income that my family seemed to think appeared by magic. The approval was instant. I paid the deposit and the first month's rent without blinking. $5,000 leaving my account felt like a bloodletting. But it was the good kind. It was purging the poison. Then came the surgery. I opened the Smart Home Administration panel. This was the nervous system of the house. I had installed it all. The Nest thermostats, the Ring cameras, the August smart locks, the Philips Hue lights. Everything was linked to my email, my credit card, my control. Step 1. Unlink devices. I selected the master bedroom group. Douglas liked his room kept at exactly 72 degrees. I deleted the schedule. I removed the device from my account. The thermostat would revert to its factory setting, which was a chilly 64 degrees. I selected the Serena's room group. She slept with a Dyson air purifier and a high-end white noise machine that played the sound of ocean waves. I clicked off. Then I clicked remove device. Upstairs. The gentle whoosh of the air purifier died. The ocean waves stopped. The silence in the house deepened. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Step 2. The utilities transfer. This was the lethal blow. I navigated to the power company's website. My name was the primary account holder. I selected Stop Service, but I did not choose Disconnect. That would be illegal. You cannot leave a residence without power in winter. Instead, I chose Transfer of Responsibility. I entered the new responsible party, Douglas Carver. I entered the effective date today, immediately. The system prompted me for a payment method for the new account. I left it blank. The system warned me, failure to provide a valid payment method may result in immediate service interruption or switch to low-voltage emergency service. I clicked Confirm. Since Douglas did not have a valid credit card on file with the power company, because his credit score was lower than the basement temperature, the automated system would flag the account within hours. By sunrise, the house would be switched to the emergency limiter. It would provide just enough power to keep the pipes from freezing, but not enough to run the dishwasher, the dryer, or Serena's ring lights. I did the same for the water, the gas, and finally the internet. I logged into the ISP portal. Obsidian Fiber 1 gigabyte business line. That was my plan. It cost $200 a month. It was fast enough to run a small data center. I clicked Cancel Service. The screen asked, "Are you sure early termination fees may apply?" I clicked Yes. I watched the loading bar spin. Service canceled. Modem will go offline at 4 a.m. Perfect. Just enough time for me to be gone. I closed the laptop. I put it in my backpack. I walked over to the kitchen counter. I took the spare key to the house off my ring. I placed it on the granite countertop. Next to it, I placed the key fob to the Lexus. The car was legally mine, but I had reported it as unauthorized use to the insurance company and the local police non-emergency line an hour ago via their online portal. I marked the location as parked at residence, keys surrendered. Let them deal with the tow truck. I grabbed a sticky note and a pen. I wrote a single sentence. I did not write, "I hate you." I did not write, "You broke my heart." That would give them too much power. I wrote, "Good luck with the cosmic energy." I stuck it to the car key. I checked my watch. 1:45. The specialized movers were scheduled to arrive in 15 minutes. I had hired a white glove service that specialized in discreet, high-value extraction. They were used to moving art and servers for paranoid tech billionaires. They cost a fortune, but they were silent. At 2 o'clock exactly, a black unmarked van pulled into the driveway. They did not ring the doorbell. I saw the headlights flash once. I opened the front door. 2 men in black uniforms walked in. They wore soft-soled shoes. They did not speak. I pointed to the hallway where my server unit lay upside down on the floor. I pointed to the monitors. I pointed to the box of cables I had salvaged from the shed. They worked with terrifying efficiency. They wrapped the server in anti-static blankets. They secured the monitors in padded cases. They lifted the heavy equipment as if it were styrofoam. Within 12 minutes, my entire office, or what was left of it, was in the back of their van. "Delivery to the Seattle storage facility," one of them whispered. "Yes," I said. "Priority shipping." They nodded and vanished. The van rolled away without a sound. I stood in the empty hallway. The spot where my server had been was just a blank patch of wall. The sunroom was dark. The house felt huge and empty. I walked to the front door. I put on my coat. I put on my boots. I checked my pockets. Phone, wallet, passport. I stepped out onto the porch. The cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. It smelled of snow and pine. It did not smell of burning sage. It did not smell of mildew. I turned around to face the door. I pulled out my phone one last time. I opened the Smart Lock app. The current code was a birthday, Serena's birthday. Of course, I deleted it. I generated a new code. A random string of 6 numbers that I memorized instantly and would never write down. I pressed Update Lock. The deadbolt mechanism whirred. Click. The light on the keypad turned red. They were locked in. Or rather, once they opened that door to leave, they would be locked out. They had lost the physical keys years ago because they were too lazy to carry them, relying entirely on the keypad I maintained. I walked down the driveway. I did not look back at the windows. I did not wonder if they were warm. I did not wonder if they were dreaming. I stopped at the end of the driveway. I pulled up my contacts. Douglas Carver, block contact. Serena Carver, block contact. Aunt Linda, the flying monkey who always took their side, block contact. I opened my email settings. I created a new rule. If sender contains Carver, move to folder trash. I opened my social media apps. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I set my profiles to private. I blocked their handles. I blocked their friends. Digital silence. A pair of headlights appeared down the street. The Uber Black, a sleek Lincoln Navigator. It pulled up to the curb. The driver, a man named Thomas with a 5-star rating, got out and opened the door for me. Heading to the airport. "Ma'am?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "And Thomas, could you take the highway? I want to get there fast." "You got it." I slid into the leather seat. It was warm. The car smelled of leather and mints. I closed the door. The sound of the latch engaging was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. As we pulled away, I watched the house recede in the rearview mirror. It was just a dark shape against the night sky. It looked small. It looked insignificant. For 5 years, that house had been a prison. It had been a vampire, sucking my time, my money, and my sanity. But as we turned the corner and the house disappeared from view, I felt a physical sensation in my chest. It was a lightness. A pressure valve had been released. I was not homeless. I was free. I leaned my head back against the headrest and closed my eyes. "Goodbye, Douglas," I whispered. "Goodbye, Serena." I hoped they enjoyed the silence, because it was the last thing I was ever going to give them for free. The first-class lounge at O'Hare International Airport is a study in beige tranquility. It smells of expensive espresso and old money. I sat in a high-backed leather wing chair, a glass of vintage champagne in one hand and my iPad in the other. It was 6:45 in the morning. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the tarmac was a gray blur of snow and jet fuel. Inside my iPad screen, it was showtime. I had revoked my own administrative access to the smart home system, but I had left myself a backdoor of view-only guest account for the living room security camera. I told myself it was for security verification. In reality, it was because I wanted to watch the world burn. The feed was grainy in the low light of dawn, but I could see the living room clearly. It was a still life of suburban decay. The massage chair sat in the middle of the room like a beached whale. The sage Serena had burned the night before had left a smudge of ash on the windowsill. At 7 o'clock exactly, the show began. The first sign of trouble was the temperature. I could not feel it, of course, but I could see it. The digital display on the wall-mounted thermostat was flashing a warning: connection lost, default mode engaged. The temperature in the house had dropped to 62 degrees. Douglas was the first to emerge. He walked into the frame wearing the velour tracksuit I bought him. Shivering, he rubbed his arms, looking confused. He walked over to the thermostat and tapped it aggressively. He smacked the side of it. The The universal boomer repair method. Nothing happened. He grumbled something I could not hear. The camera had audio, but he was muttering and shuffled into the kitchen. I switched the feed to the kitchen camera. Douglas approached the smart coffee maker. This was a $400 machine that I had programmed to grind beans and brew a fresh pot at 7 sharp every morning. It was silent, dark, lifeless. Douglas pressed the brew button. Nothing. He pressed it again, harder. He looked at the display. Wi-Fi disconnected. Please reconnect to cloud. He stared at the machine as if it had spoken to him in Aramaic. He pulled the carafe out, checked for water, put it back in, and hit the button again. He slapped the top of the machine. "Serena," he yelled. The audio picked this up clearly. "The internet is broken again. I cannot get my coffee." I took a sip of champagne. The bubbles were crisp and cold. It tasted like victory. A moment later, Serena appeared. She was wearing a silk robe, my old one, and holding her phone in the air, walking in circles like she was trying to summon a demon. "Dad, shut up," she snapped. "My TikTok won't load. I have 0 bars. Is the router unplugged?" "I don't know," Douglas shouted, abandoning the coffee maker to open the fridge. "The house is freezing. Did you touch the heat?" "I didn't touch anything," Serena shrieked. She walked over to the router on the counter. The lights on the modem were all dark, except for one blinking red LED labeled status. "It's red," Serena said. "Annie probably changed the password again to be annoying. She is so petty." She looked around. "Where is she?" "Annie fixed the Wi-Fi. I have a brand deal to post." They moved through the kitchen, checking the usual spots. They checked the pantry. They checked the back door. Then they saw the island. They saw the keys. They saw the note. Serena picked up the sticky note. She read it out loud. "Good luck with the cosmic energy." She frowned. "What does that mean? Is that a joke?" Douglas picked up the keys. He looked at the car key fob. "She left the Lexus key. Why would she leave the key?" "She probably went to a hotel," Serena said, tossing the note back on the counter. "She is throwing a tantrum because we moved her desk. She wants us to beg her to come back. Whatever. She will be back by dinner to cook." She turned to the fridge. "I'm starving. I'm going to make a smoothie." She opened the freezer. The light inside was dim. She pulled out a bag of frozen berries. She dumped them into the high-powered blender plugged into the island outlet. She hit pulse. The blender roared to life for exactly half a second, then darkness. The kitchen lights flickered and died. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The blender groaned and spun down to a halt. "What the hell?" Serena screamed. I chuckled softly in the lounge. "The power limiter." By removing the priority energy plan and defaulting the account to Douglas's non-existent credit, the smart meter had detected the surge from the blender combined with the hairdryer Douglas had apparently just turned on in the downstairs bathroom. The load exceeded the emergency amperage. Trip. The house was now dark, cold, and silent. Douglas came stumbling back into the kitchen, his hair half wet. The power went out. I was drying my hair. "What is going on?" "Annie did this," Serena hissed. "She cut the power. She is trying to punish us." She pulled out her phone. "I am calling her. I am going to scream at her until her ears bleed." On the table next to my champagne glass, my phone screen lit up. A notification appeared. "Call blocked, Serena Carver." I watched on the iPad as Serena held the phone to her ear, her face twisting in rage. She pulled it away, looked at the screen, and dialed again and again. "Straight to voicemail," she spat. "She blocked me. The audacity." Douglas grabbed his own phone. He dialed. My phone lit up again. "Call blocked, Douglas Carver." "Me too," Douglas said, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "She blocked her own father." He held the phone up to his mouth and shouted into the voicemail. "Annalise, you listen to me. You turn the power back on right now. This is elder abuse. I am freezing. You are an ungrateful, selfish little brat. When you come home, you are going to be grounded. You hear me? Grounded at 34. I swiped the notification away. Grounded. The delusion was almost impressive. "I'm hungry," Serena whined. I can't blend my smoothie. I'm going to order Uber Eats. I want the breakfast burrito from that place on Main. She tapped furiously on her phone. She was using her cellular data now, which I knew was also on a capped plan that I paid for. But she had not hit the limit yet. I watched her face. She was tapping, waiting, tapping again. "What?" she said. "Payment declined." She looked at Douglas. "Dad, the card is declined. The one Annie gave me for emergencies." "Try the other one," Douglas said, shivering and rubbing his arms. "The one for groceries." "I did. It says card invalid. Contact issuer." Serena looked up, genuine panic starting to creep into her eyes. "Did she cancel the cards?" "She can't cancel the cards," Douglas said, his voice trembling. "Those are family cards. She gave them to us." "Well, they aren't working." Serena threw her phone onto the counter. It slid across the granite and hit the fruit bowl. "So we have no power, no heat, no internet, and no food. Is she crazy?" "Check your email," Douglas said. "Maybe the bank sent a fraud alert." Douglas fumbled with his phone. He squinted at the screen. "I have an email. From the bank." He opened it. I zoomed in on the video feed. Though I could not see his screen, I knew what it said. I had scheduled the notification myself. "Dear Mr. Carver," Douglas read, his voice shaking. "We regret to inform you that your mortgage payment for January is 30 days past due. The automatic transfer from account ending in 8894, my account has been canceled by the account holder. Please remit payment of $2,400 immediately to avoid default proceedings." He looked up at Serena. He looked pale, ghostly pale. "She stopped paying the mortgage," he whispered. "She canceled the transfer." "So pay it," Serena yelled. "Just use your pension." "My pension is $800, Serena," Douglas screamed back. "The mortgage is $2,400. The electricity is $300. The water is $50. I have no money. She has all the money." The reality was finally hitting them. It was a physical blow. They stood in the darkening kitchen, the cold seeping through the walls, realizing that the magic money faucet had not just been turned off, it had been ripped out of the wall. "I need to leave," Serena said, grabbing her keys. "I can't deal with this energy. I'm going to Starbucks. I need Wi-Fi. I'll take the Lexus." She grabbed the key fob from the counter. "Wait," Douglas yelled. "Take me to the bank. I need to yell at a manager." "Fine. Hurry up." They rushed out of the kitchen. I switched the camera feed to the driveway camera. I saw them run out into the cold morning air, their breath forming clouds of steam. They ran to the Lexus parked in the driveway. It was a beautiful car. Silver, polished. Serena pointed the fob at the car. She pressed the unlock button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Harder. She walked right up to the driver's side door and mashed the button. The car remained locked. The lights did not flash. The mirrors did not unfold. "The battery is dead." Serena kicked the tire. "Everything is broken today." "Use the manual key," Douglas shouted. "There's a little key inside the fob." Serena fumbled with the fob, popping it open to get the emergency physical key. She jammed it into the door handle and turned it. The door clicked open. "Finally," she groaned. She jumped into the driver's seat. Douglas scrambled into the passenger side. She put the key in the ignition. It was a push to start. But it had an emergency slot. She pressed the start button. The dashboard lit up. The radio came on. But the engine did not turn over. Instead, a calm, robotic voice filled the cabin. I could hear it faintly through the exterior microphone of the camera. "System disabled. Vehicle reported as unauthorized usage. Ignition locked. Please contact owner or local law enforcement." Serena screamed. It was a primal scream of frustration. She slammed her hands against the steering wheel. "It's locked." She locked the car remotely. She reported it stolen. "She can't do that," Douglas yelled. "It's my car, I drive it." "It's in her name, Dad. Everything is in her name." Serena turned to look at him, her eyes wide with horror. "We don't own anything. We are squatters." Just then, A blue and red light flashed on the street. A police cruiser pulled up to the curb, followed by a tow truck. I smiled. My timing was impeccable. 2 officers stepped out of the cruiser. They walked up the driveway, their hands resting on their belts. Serena rolled down the window. "Officer, thank God my sister stole our car." "Well, she locked us out of it." The officer, a tall man with a mustache, looked at his clipboard. "Are you Serena Carver?" "Yes." "And Douglas Carver?" "That's me," Douglas said, leaning over. "My daughter is having a mental breakdown. She hacked our car." The officer shook his head. "Ma'am, sir, please step out of the vehicle. We have a retrieval order for this vehicle authorized by the registered owner, Annalise Carver. It has been flagged for unauthorized use by non-insured drivers. I am insured." Douglas lied. "Not on this policy," the officer said calmly. "The owner removed all authorized drivers as of 2:00 a.m. this morning. You are currently operating a vehicle without consent. Now, step out, or we will have to add grand theft auto to the report." Serena opened the door. She stepped out, shivering in her thin robe. Looking from the police to the tow truck, she looked small. She looked defeated. "But how are we supposed to get to the bank?" she whispered. "That's a civil matter, ma'am," the officer said. He signaled the tow truck driver. I watched as they hooked up the Lexus. I watched Douglas standing on the lawn in his tracksuit, yelling at the sky. I watched Serena sinking to the curb, burying her face in her hands. "Flight 492 to Seattle is now boarding first-class passengers," the announcer's voice echoed in the lounge. I closed the iPad cover. I finished my champagne. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and picked up my bag. The show was over. The intermission was beginning, but I knew the second act would be even better. I walked toward the gate, not looking back. The apartment in Seattle was a glass box in the sky. It smelled of nothing, no sage, no mildew, no deception, just clean, filtered air, and the faint scent of rain coming off the Puget Sound. My specialized movers had delivered my equipment with military precision. My server rack was already humming in the climate-controlled den. A soothing white noise that felt like a heartbeat. I sat at my new desk, a sleek slab of tempered glass. I had 3 monitors live, to the untrained eye. My screens looked like chaos streams of code, banking interfaces, credit reports, and public record databases. To me, it was a crime scene. I was conducting a forensic audit of my own life. I had spent a decade hunting financial anomalies for billion-dollar corporations. I could spot a shell company in the Cayman Islands from a single wire transfer. But as I peeled back the layers of my family's financial history, I realized I had been the victim of the oldest con in the book, The Long Con. I started with my credit report. I had frozen my credit the night I left, but I needed to see the damage. I logged into Equifax. I expected to see the mortgage, the car loan, maybe a few inquiries from when I shopped for insurance. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were 3 credit cards I did not recognize. Chase Sapphire Reserve, opened June 2024. Balance $15,000. Status current minimum payments only. Amex Platinum, opened August 2024. Balance $18,000. Status past due, 30 days. Capital One Venture, opened December 2024. Balance $12,000. Status over limit. $45,000. I clicked on the application details for the Chase card. The address on file was 42 Maple Drive. The phone number was Douglas's cell. The email was dcarver1962@gmail.com. But the social security number was mine. The income listed was mine. Douglas had stolen my identity. He had used my stellar credit score, built on years of discipline, to fund a lifestyle he could not afford. I cross-referenced the transaction history: golf clubs, online gambling sites, high-end cigars, a subscription to a dating site for mature singles. He had been living like a king on credit cards issued in his daughter's name, intercepting the physical mail before I got home from work, and making the minimum payments from his pension to keep the scheme hidden. I felt a cold rage spreading through my veins. This was not just borrowing, this was federal fraud. But I was not done. I moved to the public records search. I typed in Serena's name, my sister, the energy healer. I found a business registration in Delaware. Serena's Glow LLC, registered agent Annalise Carver. I blinked. I had never signed incorporation papers. I dug deeper. Serena had signed me up as the guarantor for a brand representative contract with a company called Lumina Vitality. It was a multi-level marketing scheme selling quantum-infused skincare. The account was in arrears. There was a warehouse lien against my company for $12,000 of unsold inventory, and worse, there was a cease and desist order from the Federal Trade Commission flagged in the database against Lumina Vitality for making false medical claims, because I was listed as the registered agent and guarantor. If the FTC sued, they would come for me. Serena had not just stolen my money. She had exposed me to regulatory liability. She had forged my signature on federal documents. I leaned back in my chair. The view of the Space Needle outside was breathtaking, but all I could see was the prison cell I had narrowly escaped. Then came the final blow, the one that made the $45,000 look like pocket change. I pulled up the property records for the house. I knew I was on the deed. I knew the mortgage was in my name, but I saw a new lien recorded just 3 weeks ago. Second mortgage/home equity line of credit, lender Shadow Creek Holdings. Shadow Creek Holdings, that sounded like a shell company. I ran a background check on the entity. It was not a bank. It was a private lending firm registered to a P.O. box in a strip mall in New Jersey. The interest rate listed on the lien was 28%. Douglas had taken out a second mortgage on the house. He had forged my signature on the notarized documents, probably using his old drinking buddy, a notary who had lost his license years ago. He had borrowed $100,000 against the equity I had paid for. Where did the money go? I traced the wire transfer from the Shadow Creek payout. It went into a crypto wallet. I followed the blockchain trail. It was not Bitcoin. It was not Ethereum. It was a token called Zenith Coin. I searched for Zenith Coin. It was a rug pull project, a scam coin promoted by influencers on TikTok. I found a video from 3 weeks ago. It was Serena. She was on a live stream, holding a glass of champagne, probably mine, shouting, "Guys, Zenith Coin is the future. My dad just went all in. We are going to be billionaires. Get in before the moon." They had leveraged my house, to buy a scam coin that Serena was promoting. And then the realization hit me like a physical slap. The sunroom. Why were they so desperate to move me out of the sunroom? Why did they need it for golden hour content? I pulled up the promotional materials for Zenith Coin. The developers were asking for proof of a physical headquarters to list on their exchange application to look legitimate. They needed photos of a high-tech office. Douglas and Serena were not just filming TikToks. They were setting up a fake office to send photos to the scammers. Pretending that Zenith Coin had a legitimate operations center, they wanted to use my server rack, my monitors, my professional setup as the backdrop for their fraud. If I had stayed, if I had let them take those photos, I would have been implicated as the technical lead of a crypto scam. When the FBI inevitably raided the operation, they would have found my equipment, my IP address, and my office in the promotional materials. I would have gone to prison for 20 years. My hands were shaking. I put them flat on the glass desk to steady them. This was not a family dispute. This was a criminal conspiracy. My father and sister were not just mooches. They were active threats to my freedom. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had never used for personal reasons. "Obsidian Legal. This is Marcus," a sharp voice answered. "Marcus, it is Annalise Carver. I have a code red situation regarding my personal liability. Talk to me, Annalisa." I laid it all out. The credit cards, the MLM contract, the forged mortgage, the crypto scam. I spoke for 20 minutes without pausing. When I finished, the silence on the line was heavy. "Annalise," Marcus said, his voice devoid of its usual warmth, "you are in extreme danger. If Zenith Coin collapses, and it will, the SEC and the OJ will look for the money. If your name is on the deed where the operation was based and your equipment was used, you are the prime suspect." "I know," I whispered. "You have to nuke it," Marcus said. "You have to file an identity theft affidavit with the FTC immediately. You have to file a police report for forgery against Douglas and Serena Carver. You have to go on record stating that you are the victim of financial crimes committed by your family. If you do not report them, the law will assume you were a willing participant. They are my family." "Marcus, if I file this, Douglas will go to prison. Serena will go to prison. Annalise," Marcus said firmly, "they were willing to send you to prison to buy a massage chair. They were willing to destroy your life for a fake coin. They have already made their choice. Now you have to make yours. Do you want to visit them in prison, or do you want to be in the cell next to them?" I looked at the server rack humming in the corner. I looked at the life I had built. "Send me the forms," I said. "Good. I will have a draft ready in an hour. Fill it out, sign it. We file it with the Seattle PD and fax it to the jurisdiction in Ohio." I hung up. My phone buzzed again. It was not a call. It was a text. I had blocked their numbers, but I had set up a quarantine folder where their messages were diverted so I could collect evidence. I opened the folder. It was flooding. "Serena, you bitch. The police took the car. How am I supposed to go to my nail appointment?" "Serena, Dad is crying. He is having chest pains. If he dies, it is your fault." "Serena, unlock the internet. I need to stream. I'm losing followers." "Serena, I hate you. You are so selfish. You have everything and you won't even share." "Douglas, Annalise, call me. We can talk about this. The bank is calling about the mortgage. Just pay it this one time and I will pay you back when Zenith coin hits $1. He was still delusional. He still thought the scam coin was going to pay him back. I did not reply to Serena. I did not reply to the threats or the guilt trips. I opened my email client. I composed a new message. To dcarver1962@gmail.com. Subject notice of fraud investigation. I attached 4 files. The Chase credit card application with my forged SSN. The Lumina Vitality contract with my forged signature. The Shadow Creek mortgage lien document. A screenshot of the Zenith coin wallet trace. I wrote a single line of text in the body of the email. "I know everything. The police report is being filed in the morning. Do not contact me again." I hit send. I watched the progress bar complete. I sat back in my chair. The sun was setting over the Puget Sound, turning the sky a brilliant, bloody orange. I felt a profound sadness, a grief so deep it felt like physical pain. I was an orphan now, not because they were dead, but because the people I thought were my family had never really existed. They were just parasites wearing the faces of people I loved. But mixed with the grief was relief. The cancer was cut out. The wound was bleeding, but I would survive. I turned back to my screens. I had work to do. I had to rebuild my credit. I had to secure my name, and I had to prepare for the war that was coming when they read that email. The silence in my Seattle apartment was broken not by a phone call, but by a vibration. It started as a single buzz on my desk, then another, and then it transformed into a continuous, angry hum. My phone, which I had set to Do Not Disturb, was lighting up so frantically it looked like it was having a seizure. I picked it up. The notifications were not texts. They were tags. "Serena Vibes mentioned you in a story. Serena Vibes tagged you in a post. Justice for Dad commented, 'You are a monster.' Eat, the Rich 88 commented, 'Imagine freezing your own family for a bonus check. Disgusting.'" I opened TikTok. My stomach tightened. Not with fear, but with the cold, hard nausea of recognizing a calculated assault. Serena had gone nuclear. She was live. The viewer count was climbing past 40,000. She was sitting in the living room of the house on Maple Drive. She was wrapped in 3 blankets, wearing a beanie, and holding a single, flickering candle, one of her unsold manifestation candles. The lighting was dim, designed to make the house look like a Victorian workhouse in winter. "I don't usually do this," Serena whispered to the camera. wiping away a tear that looked suspiciously like eye drops. I try to be positive. I try to spread light. But tonight I am just so cold. She sniffled. The comments section was scrolling so fast it was a blur of broken hearts and angry face emojis. My sister, Serena continued, looking directly into the lens. My own sister, Annalise Carver, who makes, 6 figures working for this shady corporate security firm. She cut our power. She cut our heat. In the middle of January, she panned the camera to Douglas. He was sitting in the background, huddled in his coat, looking frail and defeated. It was an Oscar-worthy performance from a man who, just yesterday, had screamed at me for not buying him a massage chair. She did it because she is jealous, Serena said, her voice trembling. She has always hated that I am a creator. She hates that I have a following. She calls my job fake. So she used her hacker skills to lock us out of our own home. She stole our car. She stole our money. We are trapped here. Guys, we have no food. We are freezing, and she is probably drinking champagne in a penthouse somewhere, laughing at us. The comments were vicious. Dox her. Find her employer. Obsidian Systems. Is that where she works? Let's review bomb them. What kind of psychopath does this to their dad? I watched for another minute. Serena was smart. She did not mention the fraud. She did not mention the credit cards. She painted a simple, digestible narrative: the evil, wealthy corporate sister versus the struggling, artistic family. It was David and Goliath. If David was a grifter with a ring light. Then I checked Facebook. Douglas had joined the fray. He had posted a status update in the Maplewood community group and on his personal page. It was written in all caps, riddled with typos. My daughter Annalise Carver has abandoned her family. After I raised her alone after her mother died, she has turned her back on her roots. She locked me out of my own bank accounts. She left me to freeze. She has no soul. Shame on you. Annalise, God is watching. It had 200 shares. My phone rang. It was not a block number. It was the one number I could not ignore. Obsidian Systems, Director of Operations. I answered immediately. Hello, Mr. Sterling? Annalise. His voice was crisp, professional, but tight. Why is our company logo trending on Twitter alongside the hashtag corporate abuse? I am aware of the situation. Sir, I said, sitting up straighter. My family is attempting to retaliate against me for separating my finances from theirs. They are spreading misinformation. I don't care about your family drama, Annalise, Sterling said. I care that our clients value discretion. We handle data for the defense sector. We cannot have a senior architect being accused of hacking her family and starving the elderly. It looks unstable. It looks like a liability. It is not hacking, I said. It is a smart home system I own. I simply removed their access. Fix it, Sterling said. You have 24 hours to kill this story. If the stock dips, or if a client calls me asking why we employ a psycho, you are on administrative leave, indefinitely. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, I said. The line went dead. I put the phone down. I took a deep breath. They had threatened my home. They had threatened my finances. Now, they were threatening my career. They wanted a fight. They wanted a narrative. I looked at my 3 monitors. I looked at the server humming in the corner. Serena had a ring light and a sob story. I had terabytes of data and the truth. I did not reply to the comments. I did not record a tearful video defending myself. That is what amateurs do. Professionals do not argue. They present evidence. I opened my video editing software. I opened my cloud storage archives. I had saved everything. Every motion-activated clip from the security cameras for the last 90 days. I had saved every digital receipt, every bank transfer, every email. I began to assemble my defense. It was not a story. It was a dossier. First, the starving family narrative. I pulled the transaction history from the credit card Douglas had opened in my name. I took screenshots of the charges from last week. DraftKings $500, Liquor Barn, $200. Cigar Lounge, $150. I pulled Serena's spending from the authorized user card I had canceled. Sephora, $400. Delta Airlines, first class upgrade, $800. Resort booking Cabo, $2,000. I overlaid these receipts on top of the video of Serena crying about having no food. The contrast was brutal. Next, the jealousy narrative. I found the clip from 2 nights ago, the night of the eviction. The camera angle was from the corner of the sunroom. It showed Douglas and Serena standing over my dismantled server. The audio was crisp. "Just toss it in the hall," Douglas said on the recording. "Who cares? It is just wires." "I need this room," Serena said, laughing as she kicked my cable box. "Her job is so fake anyway. She just types, 'I am going to be famous. Dad, Zenith coin is going to the moon.'" Then, the smoking gun. The clip I found from 3 weeks ago. The one that proved the malice. It was in the kitchen. Douglas and Serena were sitting at the island. Papers were spread out. "Just sign it," Serena said. "She never checks her credit report. She is too busy working." "I don't know, honey," Douglas said. "Forging a signature is risky." "Dad, do you want the money for the buy-in or not?" Serena snapped. "She owes us. She lives here rent-free. Just sign it. A. Carver." "It looks close enough." I watched Douglas on the screen. I watched him pick up the pen. I watched him practice my signature on a napkin. Then sign the mortgage document. "Done," Douglas said, grinning. "Easy money." I clipped it. I enhanced the audio. I zoomed in on the document. I had the receipts. I had the confession. I had the motive. I spent the next 3 hours composing. I did not post it on TikTok. TikTok is for entertainment. I posted it on LinkedIn and Twitter. These were the platforms where my boss, my clients, and the real world lived. I wrote the headline, "The Truth About Family Extortion, Identity Theft, and the Corporate Villain Narrative." The body of the post was surgical. I have remained silent for years to protect the dignity of my family. I have paid their mortgages, funded their lifestyles, and covered their debts. Today, my sister, Serena Carver, and my father, Douglas Carver, launched a defamation campaign against me because I finally stopped allowing them to commit financial crimes in my name. I attached the video dossier. I captioned it, "Exhibit A, the reality." Then, I did the thing that would ensure this didn't just clear my name, but ended their little game forever. I tagged the stakeholders. To the brands currently sponsoring Serena Vibes Lumina Vitality, Zenith Coin, and Glow Up Skincare, please be aware that your brand ambassador is currently under investigation for identity theft and federal wire fraud. The office she uses in her content was my workspace, seized without my consent. The lifestyle she promotes was funded by credit cards, opened fraudulently using my social security number. I added one more tag. To the Internal Revenue Service IRS and the Federal Trade Commission FTC, please consider this a public submission of evidence regarding the unreported income and fraudulent business practices of Serena's Glow LLC and the unregistered securities promotion of Zenith Coin by Douglas Carver. I read it over. It was cold. It was factual. It was devastating. I hit post. I sat back and waited. It took exactly 12 minutes for the wind to change. The first comments on LinkedIn were from my colleagues in the industry. "Annalise, this is horrifying. We stand with you. The evidence is undeniable. Stay strong." Then, the Twitter algorithm picked it up. The hashtag corporate abuse that Serena had started began to mutate. It became Serena Carver fraud. People love a victim, but the internet loves a receipt even more. The video of Douglas practicing my signature went viral instantly. The contrast between Serena crying about being cold and the receipt for her first-class flight to Cabo was meme gold. "She's crying in a blanket but flew first class last week. The audacity." Wait, they forged her signature for a mortgage. That's prison time. "I used to follow Serena, unfollowing immediately. This is sick." Then came the corporate responses. Lumina Vitality posted a tweet. We take allegations of fraud very seriously. We have suspended our partnership with Serena Carver pending a full investigation. Glow Up Skincare commented on my post. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We have terminated our contract with Ms. Carver effective immediately. Even Zenith Coin, the scam that it was, tried to distance itself. Their account went private. My phone rang again. It was Sterling. I saw the post, he said. Is it a problem, sir? I asked. No, Sterling said. I could hear a smile in his voice. It is a masterclass in crisis management. You controlled the narrative with data. That is why we pay you the big bucks. Annalise, take the rest of the week off. Let the heat die down. Thank you, sir. I hung up. I looked at the TikTok stream. Serena was still live, but the mood had shifted. She was staring at her phone, her face pale. The comments were no longer supportive. Explain the signature video. Serena, did you really steal her identity? Why did you lie about the food? Fraud, fraud, fraud. Serena looked at the camera. Her lip quivered. This time, the fear was real. I have to go, she stammered. My battery is dying. She ended the stream. I refreshed the page. User not found. She had deactivated. I leaned back in my chair. The sun had fully set now. The city lights of Seattle were twinkling below me. I felt tired, but clean. I had not just defended myself. I had dismantled their weapon. I checked my email. A new message from Douglas. You ruined us. Serena is crying. The police called us about the report. How could you do this to your own blood? I moved the email to the evidence folder without replying. I walked to the window and pressed my hand against the cool glass. They had tried to bury me. They didn't realize I was a seed, and now I was growing a forest of consequences that would swallow them whole. The phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from Marcus, the lawyer. FTC just acknowledged receipt of the affidavit. They are opening a case file. Also, the brands you tagged, their legal teams are already reaching out to me to distance themselves from your sister to avoid being named as co-conspirators. You didn't just burn the bridge, Annalise. You nuked the canyon. I smiled. A cold, winter smile. Good, I whispered to the empty room. Let them climb out of the crater. 2 days after I dropped the digital nuke on my family's reputation, the silence from the house on Maple Drive was deafening. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a pressurized vessel waiting to rupture. I sat in my Seattle apartment, watching the rain streak against the glass. My monitors were quiet for the first time in 48 hours. The viral storm had passed, leaving behind the wreckage of Serena's influencer career and Douglas's social standing. But digital shame does not break bones. I knew the real blow was coming from the physical world. I had cut the internet. This meant Serena was trapped in a digital blackout. She could not delete the thousands of comments calling her a fraud. She could not block the brands issuing public statements disavowing her. She could not go live to spin a new narrative. She was forced to sit in the dark, cold house, and watch her follower count drop by the hour on her cellular data. Powerless to stop the bleeding, but the internet was the least of their problems. At 2:00 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with an Ohio area code. I usually let these go to voicemail, suspecting it was Douglas trying to bypass my blocks from a payphone, but this time, I answered. Hello? Is this Annalise? A woman's voice, older, shaky. Speaking. This is Martha. From next door. Mrs. Higgins. I sat up. Martha Higgins was the 70-year-old neighbor who used to bake me cookies when I mowed her lawn as a teenager. Mrs. Higgins, is everything okay? Annalise, honey, I don't want to get involved, she whispered, and I could hear sirens in the distance through her phone. But there are men at your father's house, scary men. They were banging on the door with baseball bats. They threw something, red paint. I think it is all over the front porch. Your father ran over here a minute ago. He is hiding in my kitchen. He is shaking like a leaf. He begged me to let him use the phone to call you. Shadow Creek Holdings. The lenders Douglas had borrowed $100,000 from to buy the scam coin were not a bank. Banks send letters, loan sharks send messages. Douglas had missed his first payment because he had spent the money, and now they were collecting. "Put him on, Mrs. Higgins," I said. My voice was ice cold. There was a fumbling sound, then heavy, panicked breathing. Annie, oh God, you have to help me." Douglas sobbed. He sounded terrified. "They are animals. They said they are going to break my legs. They threw paint on the door. Annie, red paint. It looks like blood." "Who is they, Dad?" I asked, though I knew the answer. The investors," he stammered. "For the coin. I owe them a little interest. Just a bridge loan. Annie, please, wire me $10,000. Just 10. I can get them to leave if I give them 10,000 today." $10,000, I repeated slowly. "You want me to wire you $10,000 to pay off a loan shark you borrowed from using a house I pay for? I will pay you back," he screamed. "They are going to kill me. Do you want your father to die?" "Dad," I said, leaning back in my chair, "you have 3 credit cards in my name. The Chase Sapphire, the Amex, the Capital One. That is $45,000 in credit. Why don't you use those?" There was a silence on the other end. A thick, heavy silence. I can't," he whispered. "Why not?" "They are maxed out," he admitted. His voice was so small it was almost a squeak. "I bought the golf clubs, and the trip for Serena, and the online poker. I thought I could win it back." "You spent $45,000 in 6 months?" I asked. I wasn't angry anymore. I was amazed at the sheer velocity of his incompetence. "You stole my identity and burned through a year's salary for most people on gambling and toys." "I'm sorry," he wailed. "I'm sorry. Just help me." "I cannot help you," I said. "I froze those cards. Even if they had a balance, they are dead plastic now, and I'm certainly not wiring you my own money." "Then I am dead," Douglas shrieked. "I am a dead man." "You have one option," I said. Anything. "Go to the police station," I said. "Right now. Ask Mrs. Higgins to drive you. Walk in there and confess." "Confess." "Confess to the forgery," I said. "Tell them you forged my signature on the mortgage documents to get the loan from Shadow Creek. Tell them you stole my identity to open the credit cards. Turn yourself in. You want me to go to jail. Jail is safe. Dad," I said. "Loan sharks don't break into county jail cells. If you are in custody, you are protected, and once you confess that the loan was obtained through fraud, the police can open an investigation into Shadow Creek. It is the only way to stop them." "I can't go to jail," he wept. "I am an old man. I have a reputation." She had done it when she failed college algebra, threatened self-harm to force compliance. In the past, I would have panicked. I would have cried. I would have sent the money, but I was not that sister anymore. I was a risk analyst, and I knew how to handle a threat. "Okay," I said. "Okay." She paused, confused. "You're sending the money?" "No," I said. "I am calling 911. "What?" "I am holding my other phone right now." I lied smoothly. "I am dialing the Maplewood Police Dispatch. I am reporting an active suicide threat at 42 Maple Drive. I am giving them your name and location." "Don't you dare," she hissed. "They take these calls very seriously. Serena," I continued, my voice calm and professional. "They will be there in 5 minutes. Since you have a history of instability, they will place you on a 5150 involuntary psychiatric hold. That is 72 hours in a state facility, no phone, no TikTok, just paper scrubs and group therapy." I called the bank the legitimate bank that held the primary mortgage, the one I had stopped paying. "Mortgage servicing. This is Karen." "Hi, Karen. This is Annalise Carver. I'm calling about the loan on 42 Maple Drive. Ms. Carver, yes, we see the payment is overdue. Are you calling to make a payment? No, I said. I am calling to report a material breach of the mortgage contract. Excuse me. The property is currently being occupied by individuals who are engaging in criminal activity, specifically mortgage fraud and illegal commercial operation, I said, using the legal terms Marcus had coached me on. Furthermore, a second lien has been placed on the property without the consent of the primary borrower, me, through forged documents. I have already filed a police report. Oh, Karen said, that complicates things. I am initiating a deed in lieu of foreclosure, I said, or a short sale, whatever gets my name off the title fastest. I am surrendering the property. I am willing to accept the hit to my credit score to liquidate the asset immediately. The house is compromised. If you surrender the property, Karen said slowly, we will have to move to secure the asset. That means eviction, immediate eviction. I understand, I said. The current occupants are squatters. They have no lease. They have no ownership rights beyond the forged documents. Do what you have to do. We will send a process server today, Karen said. Thank you. I hung up. I walked to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the Seattle sky a bruised purple. 3 hours later, I received a text from Mrs. Higgins. The police came. They took your father away in handcuffs. I think he turned himself in. He looked relieved, actually. At least he is safe from those men. And Serena, I texted back. She locked herself in the house, but then another car came. A man in a suit taped a paper to the front door. It is big and orange. An eviction notice. The bank did not waste time. Once I declared the property distressed and admitted to the fraud, they moved to protect their collateral. The 30-day clock had started. I imagined Serena inside that dark, cold house. Her father was in jail. Her mother-figure sister had turned into a prosecutor. The loan sharks were circling, and now, the very walls around her were being repossessed. She could not stream. She could not post. She could not call me. She was sitting in the silence she had created, staring at a notice that told her she had 30 days to pack her bags. I sat down at my glass desk. I opened a new spreadsheet. Column A, assets. Column B, liabilities. I typed Douglas Carver and Serena Carver into column B. Then, I highlighted them. I pressed delete. The cells vanished. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. It was hot and salty. It was the last tear I would shed for them. It hurt. It hurt like amputation. But as I looked at the clean, white space on the spreadsheet where their names used to be, I realized something, for the first time in 5 years. The math finally worked. The inbox of my secure email server pinged at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. I had blocked their personal accounts. But the email came from a generic address, Maplewood Public Library _guest04library.org. I hesitated before opening it. My instinct said to delete it unread. But curiosity, or perhaps the lingering ghost of the daughter I used to be, made me click. The subject line was, "Please read. We love you. Dad, Serena." I opened it. The body of the email was a masterpiece of emotional engineering. It was not written in the angry, demanding all caps of Douglas's Facebook posts. It was soft. It was humble. It was engineered to bypass my defenses. "Dearest Annalise," it began, "we are writing this from the library because we have nowhere else to go. We are so cold, honey. But the cold has given us time to think, to really reflect on how much we hurt you." I scrolled down. "I know I messed up," Douglas wrote. "I let my ego get in the way. The doctor at the clinic says my arrhythmia is back. My heart is weak. Annie, I don't know how much time I have left. And the thought of dying while you hate me is worse than the chest pains. I just want to see my little girl one more time." And then Serena's part. "Annie, I found this photo in my wallet today." Attached was a grainy scan of a Polaroid from 20 years ago. It was the 3 of us at Disney World. Mom was there. smiling, holding my hand. I was 14, wearing braces. Serena was 9, holding a giant lollipop. We looked happy. We looked like a family. "I miss this," Serena wrote. "I miss having a big sister. I don't care about the internet anymore. I don't care about the money. I just want us to be a family again. Please, come home for dinner tonight. I managed to buy some ingredients with the last of my cash. I'm making your favorite lasagna. Just one dinner. We can talk. We will give you the sunroom back. Dad says he will sleep on the sofa. We just want to apologize to your face. Please, Annie, for Mom." I stared at the screen. My throat tightened. The image of the lasagna, the mention of Mom, the promise of the sunroom. It was a siren song. For a fleeting second, the cold armor I had welded around my heart cracked. I remembered the smell of the house when lasagna was baking. I remembered Douglas teaching me to ride a bike before the gambling started. I remembered Serena braiding my hair before the narcissism took over. Maybe they really were sorry. Maybe the shock of the eviction and the police had finally broken through their delusion. Maybe, just maybe, I could go back, not to live, but just to say goodbye properly, to get closure. My finger hovered over the reply button. I typed, "Okay," but I did not hit send. The risk analyst part of my brain, the part that Obsidian Systems paid $300,000 a year, suddenly kicked in. It was a small, nagging voice in the back of my head. Why now? Why, after the threats, the paint on the porch, the suicide baiting, did they suddenly pivot to lasagna and nostalgia? Why was Douglas, a man who refused to admit he was wrong even when the map said otherwise, suddenly willing to sleep on a sofa? And the timing. The eviction notice had a 30-day clock. Why were they desperate for me to come tonight? I deleted the "okay." I picked up my phone and called Jack. Jack was a private investigator I worked with on corporate espionage cases. He was expensive, cynical, and the best in the business. He happened to be based in Columbus, just 40 minutes from Maplewood. "Jack, it's Annalise." "Hey, boss, need a background check on a new hire?" "No," I said. "I need a drive-by. My old address, 42 Maple Drive. I need to know who is there." "Right now." "On it. Give me 40 minutes. I waited. I paced my apartment. I looked at the photo of my mother attached to the email. "For Mom," they had said. They knew exactly where to aim the knife. 45 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Incoming photos from Jack. "Jack, you're not going to like this. Annie." I opened the first photo. It was a shot of my driveway taken from a car window across the street. The Lexus was gone, obviously, but there were 2 other cars parked there. One was a beat-up sedan with a magnetic sign on the door, Viper Realty Asset Recovery. The other was a black BMW. Jack had zoomed in on the license plate frame. It read, "Law Offices of Dewey Howe, Family Law Dependency Specialists." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Jack ran the plates. The text continued. "The sedan belongs to a shady real estate broker known for "we buy ugly houses" scams. The BMW belongs to a lawyer named Richard S. Sterling, no relation to your boss. He specializes in palimony and adult dependency lawsuits. He's a shark. Annie. He sues wealthy children for parental support." The lasagna was bait. They didn't want to apologize. They wanted to serve me. If I walked into that house, I would be stepping into a legal ambush. The lawyer was there to serve me with a lawsuit claiming that by supporting them for 5 years, I had created a legal expectation of support, and that cutting them off was a breach of implied contract. They would claim Douglas was infirm, the heart condition, and Serena was incompetent, making me legally responsible for their welfare, and the real estate guy. He was probably there to pressure me into signing a quitclaim deed to get my name off the title so they could sell the house to him for cash before the bank foreclosed. They were going to trap me in the dining room, guilt-trip me with Mom's memory, and then shove papers in my face while secretly recording the conversation to use as evidence of my cruelty if I refused. The nausea hit me hard. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved. It wasn't the lasagna. It was the sheer, rotting toxicity of it all. They had weaponized my mother's memory to lure me into a trap. I washed my face. I looked in the mirror. The sad, hopeful daughter was gone. The architect was back. I walked back to my desk. I picked up the phone. I called Marcus, my lawyer at Obsidian. Marcus, get the team ready. I need a proxy intervention in Ohio at 1800 hours. What's the play? Marcus asked. They want a family reunion, I said, my voice steady. Let's give them one they will never forget. I opened the email from the library. I hit reply. Dear Dad and Serena, I typed. I am so glad you reached out. I miss you too. The lasagna sounds wonderful. I will be there at 6:00 p.m. tonight. Please have the table set. I have a surprise for you. I hit send. I imagined them reading it. I imagined the high fives. I imagined Douglas rubbing his hands together, thinking he had reeled the big fish back in. I imagined Serena rehearsing her tears in the mirror. At 5:55 p.m., I logged into the security camera feed one last time. I had re-enabled the Wi-Fi remotely for just 1 hour, specifically so I could watch this. The dining room was set. They had brought out the good china, Mom's china. There were candles lit. Serena's unsold stock. The lasagna was steaming in the center of the table. Douglas was wearing a tie. He looked nervous. He kept checking his watch. The lawyer, Richard, was hiding in the kitchen, out of sight of the front door. Holding a manila envelope, the real estate guy was sitting in the living room, looking bored. At 6:00 sharp, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Douglas jumped up. She's here. Places everyone. Look sad, Serena. Start crying. Serena rubbed her eyes and slumped in her chair, putting on her best waif expression. The doorbell rang. Douglas walked to the door. He took a deep breath. He opened it wide. A welcoming, fatherly smile plastered on his face. Annie, honey, welcome home. He stopped. Standing on the porch was not his daughter. Standing on the porch were 3 men in dark suits. Leading them was a process server named Formidable-Looking Man holding a stack of documents thick enough to choke a horse. Behind him were 2 uniformed officers from the Economic Crimes Unit of the State Police. Douglas Carver, the lead suit asked. Who are you? Douglas stammered, backing up. Where is Annalise? I am Marcus Vance, attorney for Miss Carver, the man said, stepping into the foyer without waiting for an invitation. She sends her regards, and her regrets. Regrets. Douglas paled. She cannot make it to dinner, Marcus said, his voice carrying into the dining room where Serena was freezing in her fake tears. But she did send a response to your invitation. Marcus snapped his fingers. The process server stepped forward and slapped the stack of papers into Douglas's chest. You are hereby served with a civil RICO lawsuit filed by Obsidian Systems and Annalise Carver for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and extortion. Marcus announced, We are also serving you with an immediate restraining order preventing any contact with my client. What? Douglas gasped, clutching the papers. RICO, that's for mobsters. Or for families who run organized financial scams, Marcus said dryly. Then, the police officers stepped forward. They looked past Douglas to the kitchen, where the shady lawyer was trying to sneak out the back door. Richard Sterling, one officer called out. Stop right there. We have questions about your involvement in the coercion of a protected witness. The dining room erupted into chaos. Serena screamed as an officer approached her with a warrant for her phone. The real estate broker bolted for the window. I watched it all on my iPad in Seattle. It was better than any movie. It was justice in high definition. I watched Douglas collapse into the chair, not my massage chair, but a hard wooden one. I watched him realize that the trap he had set for me had snapped shut on his own leg. I took a sip of water. I closed the laptop. Bon appetit, I whispered. The dining room of 42 Maple Drive had been set for a reconciliation. Mom's fine china was on the table. The lasagna was cooling in the center, untouched. But instead of the tearful family reunion my father and sister had choreographed, the room was now swarming with uniformed officers from the Economic Crimes Unit. I was not there. I was 2,000 miles away in Seattle, sitting in my ergonomic chair, watching the destruction of my family through the high-definition camera lens of an iPad Pro held by my attorney, Marcus Vance. The audio was crisp. I could hear the heavy thud of boots on the hardwood floors I had paid to refinish last year. I could hear the crackle of police radios, and above it all, I could hear Douglas screaming. "This is a violation of my civil rights," Douglas bellowed. He was pinned against the sideboard, his face flushed a deep, unhealthy crimson. Two officers were holding him back as a detective rifled through the drawers of the antique desk in the corner. "You have no warrant. This is my house." "Actually, Mr. Carver," Marcus said, stepping into the frame. His voice was calm, the voice of a man who holds all the cards. "We have a very specific warrant. It covers the search and seizure of all financial records, electronic devices, and secure storage units related to the investigation of identity theft, wire fraud, and money laundering." "Money laundering!" Serena shrieked. She was huddled on the floor near the kitchen door, clutching her phone to her chest until an officer gently but firmly confiscated it. "I sell skincare. I am a brand ambassador. I don't launder money." "We will see about that, Ms. Carver," the detective said. "We have records showing deposits into your Lumina Vitality business account from credit cards opened fraudulently in your sister's name, followed by immediate transfers to offshore crypto wallets. That is the textbook definition of layering and integration. That is laundering." Serena's jaw dropped. She looked at Douglas. The realization was dawning on her that her business was just a conduit for her father's crimes. "Found it," a voice called out from the study. A young officer walked in carrying a metal lockbox. It was the heavy fireproof box Douglas kept hidden behind the false panel in the library bookshelf. He thought no one knew about it. He forgot that I was the one who installed the bookshelf. "Open it," the detective ordered. "I forgot the combination." Douglas lied, sweat dripping down his temple. "The combination is 041288. I said. My voice filled the room, amplified by the iPad's speakers. Everyone froze. Douglas spun around, his eyes scanning the room until they locked onto the screen in Marcus's hands. "Annalise," he whispered. "Hello, Dad," I said. My face on the screen was impassive. I was not crying. I was not gloating. I was simply present. 041288. It is Mom's birthday. You never change your passwords. The officer spun the dial. Click. The lid popped open. The contents were dumped onto the dining table. Right next to the lasagna, it was a cornucopia of guilt. There were the credit cards, the Chase Sapphire, the Amex, the Capital One, all bearing my name but worn from use. There were stacks of loan applications for Shadow Creek Holdings. And at the bottom, the smoking gun, a notary stamp that Douglas had evidently purchased online to forge signatures on legal documents. The detective picked up a document. Loan modification agreement, borrower, Annalise Carver, signature, looks like a trace job. He looked at Douglas. "Mr. Carver, you are in possession of forgery tools and fraudulent financial instruments." Douglas looked at the evidence, then at the police, and finally at my face on the screen. His expression shifted from fear to a twisted, self-righteous anger. "You did this," he spat, pointing a shaking finger at the iPad. "You brought the police to arrest your father, your own flesh and blood. I changed your diapers. Annalise, I fed you. And you sent a SWAT team to my dinner table." "I did not send them to arrest my father," I said, my voice steady, cutting through his theatrics like a scalpel. "I sent them to arrest the man who stole $200,000 from me. I sent them to stop a criminal who leveraged my future to buy a massage chair and scam coins." I leaned closer to the camera in Seattle, making my face fill the screen in Ohio. "You have to choose, Douglas," I said. "Are you my father? Or are you a thief because a father protects his child? A thief steals her identity. You cannot be both. Pick one." Douglas opened his mouth to argue, but the fight seemed to drain out of him. He looked at the notary stamp on the table. He looked at the handcuffs on the officer's belt. "I just needed a loan," he muttered, his voice cracking. I was going to pay it back, the Zenith coin. It was supposed to hit $10. I would have paid off the mortgage. I would have bought you a new car. I did it for us. You did it for you, I corrected. And when the coin crashed, you tried to trap me into paying for it. You tried to sue me for support. He made me do it. The scream came from the floor. Serena scrambled up, pushing past the officer. She looked wild, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. Serena. Douglas looked at her, shocked. He made me sign the papers, Serena yelled, looking directly at the iPad, pleading with my digital image. Annie, listen to me. I didn't want to. He said it was just a bridge loan. He said you wouldn't mind because you have so much money. He told me to use your card for the inventory. He said it was family capital. She turned to the detective, pointing an accusatory finger at Douglas. He is the mastermind. I am just a victim. I just wanted to be an influencer. He used my LLC to hide the money. Arrest him. Don't arrest me. I am too pretty for jail. The silence that followed was absolute. Douglas stared at his favorite child, the golden child, the one he had pampered and protected while I paid the bills. He watched her throw him to the wolves without a second of hesitation. Serena, Douglas whispered, I bought you the car. I bought you the studio. You bought it with stolen money, Serena shrieked. And now my life is ruined. Look at me. I am cancelled. I watched them turn on each other. It was tragic, and it was disgusting. It confirmed everything I had suspected. There was no loyalty in this house. There was only leverage. Enough, I said. Marcus stepped forward. He placed the iPad on the table, propping it up against a crystal water pitcher so I could see both of them. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. It was bound in blue legal backing. This, Marcus said, is the final agreement. Douglas looked at the papers. What is this? This is your lifeboat, I said. Listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. The police are here because I filed an affidavit. They have enough evidence on that table to put both of you in federal prison for 15 to 20 years. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, money laundering. It is a slam dunk. Serena began to sob, a high, keening sound. However, I continued, I am tired. I do not want to spend the next 2 years flying back and forth to Ohio to testify against you. I do not want the press at my door asking why my father is a felon. So, I am offering you a deal. A deal? Douglas asked, a flicker of hope in his eyes. I will request that the district attorney suspend the charges, I said. I will decline to prosecute on the personal theft counts. I will classify the credit card debt as a civil family dispute rather than criminal fraud. Thank you. Annie, Douglas breathed out. Oh, thank you. I knew you loved me. I am not done, I snapped. There are conditions, severe conditions. Marcus slid the document across the table. He handed a pen to Douglas. Condition 1. I listed, you will sign a full confession of the debt. You acknowledge that you owe me $200,000. This confession will be held in escrow. If you ever try to contact me again, or if you ever try to access my credit again, the confession goes to the police and the deal is void. Douglas nodded rapidly. Okay, yes, sure. Condition 2? I said. You waive all rights to any future inheritance from anyone in the family line. More importantly, you waive all rights to claim parental support or dependency from me. You are signing away your right to sue me for alimony forever. I saw the lawyer, Richard Sterling, who was still cowering in the kitchen, wince. That had been their plan. I was killing it before it was born. And condition 3, I said. The house. The house. Douglas froze. The bank is foreclosing, I said. But the process takes months. I am speeding it up. You agree to vacate the property immediately. Tonight, you sign a quit-claim deed transferring any remaining interest to the bank to expedite the short sale. You leave. You do not take the furniture. You do not take the appliances. You take your clothes, and you get out. Tonight? Serena gasped. But where will we go? We have no money. That brings me to the final point, I said. Marcus, show them the file. Marcus opened a second folder. He pulled out a photograph. It was a surveillance photo taken by Jack, the private investigator. It showed a black sedan parked down the street from the house. Inside were two men with thick necks and baseball bats. Shadow Creek Holdings, Marcus said. They are not a bank. Mr. Carver. They are an organized crime syndicate operating out of Jersey. They know you missed the payment. They know you are here. Douglas went pale. He began to shake. They threw paint at the door. They said they would break my legs. If you stay in this house, I said, they will find you. They know this address. They think you still have assets. I paused, letting the reality sink in. But if you sign this agreement, I said, I have arranged for you to be placed in a temporary shelter in another county for 30 days. It is a secure facility, anonymous. The loan sharks will not find you there. By the time you come out, the house will be sold. Your names will be off the public record, and you can disappear. Douglas looked at the photo of the loan sharks. He looked at the police officers. He realized the walls had closed in completely. He was not choosing between his house and the street. He was choosing between a shelter and a hospital bed. Prison might be safer, Marcus noted casually. But Annalise is offering you a chance to be free and poor, rather than incarcerated and beaten. Douglas picked up the pen. His hand was trembling so violently he could barely hold it. He looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes anymore. There was only fear and the hollow realization of total defeat. You win, he whispered. You win. Annalise. He signed. He pressed down hard, carving his name into the paper. It was the only honest signature he had made in months. Marcus slid the paper to Serena. I can't live in a shelter, Serena wailed. There is no Wi-Fi. It's for homeless people. You are homeless, Serena, I said coldly. And frankly, without me, you always were. Sign the paper. Sign it, Douglas yelled at her, his voice cracking. Do you want to go to prison? Sign the damn paper. Serena sobbed, grabbing the pen like a dagger. She scribbled her name. Then she threw the pen across the room. It hit the wall and bounced off, landing on the floor with a hollow clatter. I hate you, she hissed at the screen. I hope you die alone in your glass tower. Better alone in a tower than together in a cell, I said. Marcus collected the documents. He checked the signatures. He nodded to the detective. The victim declines to press charges at this time, Marcus said formally. However, we request a police escort for the subjects to the designated secure location immediately. The detective nodded. All right, let's go. Grab your coats. You have 5 minutes to pack a bag. 1 bag each. Douglas stood up. He looked old. He looked small. He looked around the dining room, at the fine china, at the lasagna that was now cold and congealed. He reached out a hand toward the screen. Annie. I did not let him finish. I did not want his apology. I did not want his goodbye. I had what I wanted. I had his signature, and I had my freedom. I reached out and tapped the red End Call button. The screen went black. The connection was severed. I sat in the silence of my apartment. My heart was pounding, a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. It was done. The legal umbilical cord was cut. They were no longer my dependents. They were no longer my liability. They were just two people in the world, responsible for their own gravity. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I poured the rest of the champagne down the sink. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt like sleeping. I walked to the bedroom, leaving the lights off. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I waited for the guilt to come. I waited for the voice in my head to tell me I was a bad daughter, a cruel sister, but the voice did not come. Instead, I slept. For the first time in 5 years, I slept without grinding my teeth. 6 months have passed since the night the police raided the dining room on Maple Drive. I am sitting in my office in Seattle. It is a Tuesday morning, and the fog is rolling off the Puget Sound. wrapping the skyscrapers in a soft, gray blanket. The view from my 25th floor window is spectacular. But the most beautiful thing in this room is the sound. It is a low, steady hum. It is the sound of my server rack, fully operational, blinking with the rhythmic green lights of data flowing securely, uninterrupted, and safe. There is no banging on the door. There is no one asking me to fix the Wi-Fi. There is no one stealing my chargers or asking me to pay for a massage chair. There is just me, the machine, and the peace I purchased with the price of my own family. The loose ends have finally been tied off. Last week, I received the final closing statement from the bank regarding 42 Maple Drive. The house is gone. The bank accepted the deed in lieu of foreclosure to avoid a drawn-out legal battle, but they still put the property up for auction to recoup the losses from the second mortgage Douglas had taken out. It sold for significantly less than it was worth, mostly because the market had dipped and the inspection revealed deferred maintenance that I had refused to pay for in my final months there. After the primary mortgage was paid, and the predatory loan from Shadow Creek Holdings was settled pennies on the dollar, negotiated by Marcus, there was a surplus. A tiny, pathetic surplus. $3,412. That was the sum total of Douglas Carver's life equity. That was what remained of the family legacy. The bank mailed the check directly to him. I did not have to touch it. I imagine he stared at that check for a long time, realizing that $3,000 does not buy a retirement, let alone a new life. I know where they are now. I do not speak to them, but I keep tabs. It is not out of love. It is out of diligence. A risk analyst always monitors potential threats, even neutralized ones. Douglas is living in a state-subsidized housing complex 2 counties over. It is a small, concrete apartment block near the highway. It is not dangerous, but it is stark. It smells of industrial cleaner and boiled cabbage. He is no longer retired. The visionary manager, who was too good for the paper mill, is now working the night shift as a security guard at a storage facility. I saw a photo of him recently, taken by the private investigator I keep on a monthly retainer just to ensure they stay away. Douglas looked 20 years older. He was wearing a uniform that was slightly too large for him. He was sitting in a guard booth, staring at a monitor, guarding other people's possessions. The irony is not lost on me. He spent his life feeling entitled to my property, and now he spends his nights watching over boxes of junk that do not belong to him, earning minimum wage to pay for his heart medication. And Serena suffered a fate that, for her, is worse than prison. It is worse than death. It is irrelevance, as part of the plea deal regarding the wire fraud and the Lumina Vitality scheme. The prosecutor offered her a choice. She could do 18 months in federal prison, or she could accept 5 years of probation with strict conditions. The conditions included restitution, community service, and a court-ordered ban on the use of social media for commercial or personal promotion. She took the probation. The judge ordered her accounts deleted. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of it, gone. She is legally prohibited from creating content. If she is caught posting a video, she goes straight to jail. For a woman who lived for the dopamine hit of a like, this is a lobotomy. She is living in a studio apartment shared with 2 other roommates. She is working as a waitress at a 24-hour diner near the interstate. She wears a polyester uniform. She pours coffee for truckers who do not care about her manifestation energy or her skincare routine. She has to smile for tips. She has to work. I heard through the grapevine that she tried to start a blog under a fake name last month. The probation officer caught her within 3 days. She spent a weekend in county jail as a warning. She hasn't tried it since. She is learning, slowly and painfully, that the world does not owe her an audience. I thought I would feel happy knowing they were suffering. I thought I would feel a surge of triumph. But I don't. I feel nothing. It is a vast, empty neutrality. They are just people who used to live in my house. Yesterday. A letter arrived at my office. It had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was shaky, sprawling, and familiar. It was Douglas. He must have found my office address online. It is public record if you know where to look. I sat at my desk for a long time, holding the envelope. It felt light. I opened it with a letter opener, slicing through the top with a clean, sharp motion. It was a single page of lined notebook paper. "My dearest Annalise," it began. "I hope this letter finds you well. I hear Seattle is beautiful. I think about you every day. I sit in my booth at night and I look at the moon and I wonder if you are looking at it too. I am so sorry for everything. Annie, I was a foolish old man. I let pride get in the way. I miss my little girl. I miss the sound of your typing. I miss the way you made tea." I read the words, and I felt a flicker of something. Pity, sadness. But then I read the next paragraph. "Life is hard here. Annie, the heating in my apartment is broken and the landlord won't fix it. My legs hurt from standing all night. I'm trying to get back on my feet, but it is so expensive. If you could find it in your heart to spare just $500, just a loan, I swear I will pay you back next month when my check clears. Just $500 to get a space heater and some groceries. Please, honey, for old time's sake." I put the letter down. There it was, the hook, the pivot, the inevitable ask. Even now, after the police, after the eviction, after the total destruction of his life. He still looked at me and saw a wallet. He didn't miss me. He missed the heater. He missed the groceries. He missed the ease of having a daughter who solved problems with a credit card. He hadn't changed. He hadn't learned. He was just hungry. I picked up the letter. I walked over to the small metal trash can in the corner of my office. I pulled a lighter from my drawer. I don't smoke, but I keep it for candles. I lit the corner of the page. I watched the flame curl the paper. I watched the words, "My dearest Annalise," turn black and crumble. I watched the plea for $500 turn into gray ash. I held it until the heat kissed my fingertips. Then I dropped it into the bin. I watched it burn until there was nothing left but dust. I did not feel anger. I did not feel the urge to call him and scream. I simply felt done. The Bank of Annalise was closed. The customer service department had been disbanded. There were no more loans, no more bailouts, and no more replies. I went back to my desk. I had a meeting in an hour. I'm not alone in Seattle. I have found a community. It started as a therapy group, but it evolved into something more. We call ourselves the Architects. It is a group of young professionals who were the load-bearing walls of their dysfunctional families. We meet once a week at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. There is Sarah, a surgeon whose mother threatened to disown her every time she didn't pay for a cruise. There is Michael, a lawyer whose brother stole his identity to buy a boat. We share our stories. We share our strategies. We teach each other how to say no without shaking. I have started writing a book. It is not a memoir. It is a manual. I am calling it The Exit Strategy: How to Fire Your Family and Hire Yourself. I am writing down everything: the financial firewalls, the legal structures, the emotional gray-rocking techniques. I want to give the blueprint to every other person out there who is currently sitting in a garden shed while their family parties in the sunroom. I want them to know that you can leave. You can walk out the door at 3 a.m. and never look back. I looked at the new furniture in my office when I moved in. I decided to replace everything. I didn't want the old things. I wanted a fresh start. I bought a new desk. It is a massive slab of reclaimed walnut, dark and rich and solid. It cost $6,000. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever owned. I bought a new chair, the latest ergonomic model with carbon fiber support. But the most important addition is a small, brass plaque I had custom made. I mounted it on the front edge of the desk, right where I can see it every time I sit down. It reads, "Property of Annalise Carver. Do not move." It is a small declaration of independence. It is a reminder that my space, my work, and my peace are mine. They are not resources to be shared. They are not assets to be liquidated for someone else's dreams. They are mine. I stood up and walked to the window one last time. The fog was lifting. The sun was breaking through, hitting the water of the bay and turning it into a sheet of diamonds. People often ask me if I regret it. They ask if I miss having a family at Christmas. They ask if I worry about Douglas dying alone. I tell them the truth. I grieve for the family I wanted, but I do not miss the family I had. I realized something in the silence of that shed 6 months ago. People think revenge is fire. They think it is screaming matches and lawsuits and public humiliation. And yes, I did all of that. I used the fire to clear the field. But the true revenge, the deep, lasting satisfaction is not the destruction. It is the construction. It is building a life that is so full, so peaceful, and so successful that their absence is not a hole, but a foundation. The best revenge is not to harm them. The best revenge is to let them manage life without your buffer and watch you shine from afar. I am shining, and for the first time in 34 years, the light is all mine. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey from the sunroom to the courtroom, but I hope it gave you some clarity on your own boundaries. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you tuning in from? Have you ever had to be the villain in your family's story just to save yourself? Please share your experiences. This is a safe space for all of us recovering load-bearing walls. If you enjoyed Annalise's story, please make sure to subscribe to the Family Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button to support the work we do. And don't forget to press the hype button so this story can be heard by more people who might need the courage to stand up and reclaim their lives. See you in the next video.